What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. Another great episode of the Thomas Free Me Show. First and foremost, I'd like to apologize for my absence. It's been a hectic month. I know I said that I wanted to get a show out each week, but it's dang near impossible. To do the editing all by myself, to record, get the podcast, the guests, and plus try to build this nonprofit in Pasco County with the opposition having to do that funding. Life is expensive right now, as we all know. Please excuse absence, but understand the absence as well. But today we have a great episode, very important episode, especially with what is going on in today's time. This is one of the episodes that should have been out a couple weeks ago, but just due to life, come to this point. But life is how life is, right? And things happen the way that they happen. And when you learn to just embrace things the way that they are and just go with the flow, you'll find that everything ends up working out just fine. So, in the context of what today's show is about, right, my guest today is Mr. Alex Charns. Mr. Alex Charns is a criminal defense attorney, and he has been investigating FBI files trying to research the truth about J. Edgar Hoover and his dealings with a snitch that happened to be on the Supreme Court, our United States Supreme. So before we get into that discussion, the whole point of all of that was that in just the last few days, there have been hearings, very, very important hearings concerning the American citizens' rights and federal government wiretapping and investigations of Americans. We are still talking about this in 2024 when it comes to the rights of surveilling our American citizens. So, what I'm going to play for you is clips from the most recent of these hearings. So, just to give context of what is going on behind closed doors that is not privy to all American citizens because it's not talked about in the news. It's not a big discussion, right? You can hear about 6 football players going to lunch together, but when they talk about wiretapping American citizens, that's just not front page news. So I'm going to play a couple of these clips. They are about 18 minutes long. The episode itself runs longer than an hour, about an hour and 20 minutes. So this is a long episode. Very important for the American citizen to listen and understand how our federal government was created through J. Edgar Hoover and what J. Edgar Hoover was doing to create this federal government and how the FBI has been allowed to do what they have done to the American citizens since its just inception. So it's understanding that this whole FBI unit is corrupt and they are the most powerful entity in America. It's understanding that the federal government answers to nobody, they do what they want, and they will lie about it. And they will lie about it in such a way to make you even question why you're even questioning them. As we see with Mayorkas, as we see with Christopher Rath, Roth, whatever his name is. Right? So these FBI top dogs have been on the stand in front of Congress in their smug ways and their smug attitudes, and they've lied and they still lie and they continue to lie because these human beings have warped their mind or allowed their mind to be warped, or who knows how that human brain has warped itself into thinking that they are the overseers of the American citizen, its protection, and that the FBI feels that it is going to conduct its safety based upon how it feels. Quote unquote, a true democracy. And that is what the FBI is. It functions under democracy, not a republic. And that is the importance And this is why we hear in all of news and all of the movies and everywhere this word democracy. But the word republic is so rare. You don't hear it anywhere. You don't hear anybody defending the republic. It's defending democracy. And that's what the FBI is. They're not governed by law. They're governed by how they feel. Majority vote. So I'm going to stop my rant there. I'm going to get into playing this clip here. And please, listener, this is the utmost importance to our American way, our freedom. You know, Mr. Alex Glass and I were just having a conversation earlier. We're listening to music from the 70s and the 80s and just how that music is gone, right? Because that era is gone. And us from Generation X is the last. And I feel like we are the last generation of true freedom. That sense of just of a free life, you know, and that what is what encompassed that music, you know, and everything has turned into corporation, everything is corporate. Music is corporate now, freedom is corporate. Price of your freedom is compliance. That's the bottom line. Period. Period. And that's the point. You know, the point is that there's a constitution in place for a reason. You heard these individuals talk about the 3 branches of government and how not one of those branches should have more power than the next, because that is what keeps it all in check. So when you got the executive branch overriding the legislative branch, then you start to shift powers, and your American people are starting to be surveyed on. You got warrantless invasions coming in, no knock invasions. You got warrantless surveillance going on to Americans. And then you got social media entities like Facebook that cooperate with the FBI and pass your information over. So it's all of this that is what is going on. Please stay tuned. There's a lot of heavy content in here. Mr. Alex Charns is a beast. Please buy his book. Research, do your own research. Mr. Alex Charns, a criminal defense attorney, challenges you. Do your own research. He lays the research out for you. All you have to do is buy the book. He has many other books going all the way back to the 80s, detailing what the FBI has done. Follow the timeline, people. At the end of the day, we're American citizens, man, and we have to fight for our justice. You guys, I don't know if you guys are not taking this seriously or you think it's a joke, but once it's gone, it's gone. And there is no getting it back. You learn that in prison. When they take it out of the prison, it's gone. That's it. For the next 30 years, you'll be talking about what the prison once had. Because when it's gone, it's gone. That is how the government works. And they constrict and find ways to take things from you. They do it in prison. They create situations if they want the weight pile off the yard. They know that they just can't go take the weights off the yard because it'll cause a riot and officers could get hurt. So they create situations that bring tension on the compound, that when something occurs, now we go in and take the weights away as a punishment. You know, and then the inmates just end up turning on themselves. This is what happens. Prison is a structure that they use like mice in a laboratory, and they bring it out into society. This is the whole purpose of me creating this podcast and the whole purpose of recidivism. The New York officer that got shot, rest in peace. Now all of a sudden they're talking about career criminals, and now all of a sudden they're talking about recidivism. I'm telling you what recidivism is because I am recidivism. When you're in prison and you come out into society, you can't tell the difference. You cannot tell the difference between prison and society. All it looks like is a bigger compound and gates are further out, but the compliance is still there. You're not free only until you comply. So that's why individuals end up going back to prison. Because people out here lie and they cheat and they steal and they come to you with hugs and smiles in the face of friendship. And that's not in prison. So when we come out and we leave that sense of honor and code and some sort of dignity, as funny as it is, and we leave that and we come out here into this narcissistic, ugly, demonic world, sick world, people raping each other's children and stuff. It's disgusting. Some of you deviant people out there are disgusting. And it drives us crazy. And we want to go back to prison. That is recidivism. That is recidivism. Enjoy the show. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of the Thomas FreeMe Show. Once again, I thank you for tuning in. Before you start the show, please, I ask that you like, share, subscribe, do all of that stuff, as it is the utmost importance to the growth of my show and getting my word out there. Please make sure to visit www.cominghomecoalition.com, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that has been founded by me for the people, for the community, and I am trying to stay privately funded so that it allows me to work within the community the way that I need to work. So please make sure to visit that, and there's all kinds of links and ways that you can subscribe, donate, and make sure to please visit what we're doing here in Pasco County called Project Inside Out with Shady Hills Mission Chapel. So please visit www.cominghomecoalition.com. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, and please make sure to check out my book on Amazon, The Power of a Positive Mindset, for those who have an incarcerated loved one who just needs to change their mindset. You can find that on Amazon by simply just Googling Thomas FreeMe. Thank you, and please enjoy the show.
The material things that you're offering as far as food, helping the homeless. I mean, you're hitting everything. You're doing.
Yeah, I'm trying to hit the whole spectrum, man. You know, it's really just all it is, Alex, is really just helping people where they need help at, and having the means to do so. You know, and that's really all it is, and I've just built upon that. People come and they're like, man, I need help here. And I'm like, you mean there's nothing here? And they're like, no. So I just build it or attempt to, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just.
Well, it's impressive. I mean, I'm in awe. I'm in awe. Man. I mean,
it's what's hard for me is taking praise from an accomplished person as yourself. I mean, you're an accomplished human being, and there's no way that I'm even in comparison to the accomplishments that you've made, you know, and so it's just knowing it's gracious, you know, it's graciousness for me to know that such an accomplished man as yourself is seeing my accomplishment. You know, it just it's humbling for me, and I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, Alex, because I know you're genuine in what you say. I've known you long enough. I know you're a genuine human being. You mean what you say. You're forthright, and for you to say that is thank you.
Well, like I said, I'm just really honored and pleased to be able to, you know, be here talking to you and seeing what you're up to and following it. And I wish you were in Durham, but you can only be in one place at one time.
Well, me physically, but Coming Home Coalition can be in every city in the nation, you know?
Right.
So it's
you are with your book. I mean, that's
the book, the podcast, you know, my availability on social media, you know, that people can reach out to me. You know, I had a very good dear friend of mine in social media land, Topher. You might see him on some of my posts or whatnot, Chris. But, you know, I met Chris. Actually, Chris met me through my TikToks and my podcast at a very dark time in his life where he was contemplating, you know, just stopping and quitting. And it was my show and my words and my podcast that gave him hope and reinvigorated him, I guess you could say. And it's just these small little things, knowing that there's people all across the country that reach out to me on Messenger, that for whatever reason they're able to draw strength from me, and be inspired. And that's all I care about, is that people get up and do something with their life. Because I mean, I was a nobody. I was a castaway. I was a throwout. People written me off, and that doesn't stop you. It's just all in how you view yourself and look at yourself and what you do with that. And damn everybody else. That's what I tell people is, man, damn what these people talk about and think about. I had a man here in this room just 2 weeks ago. Matter of fact, this was as we start to get into our discussion about the corruption of this government, just 2 weeks ago, man, I had a gentleman and a lady in here, who are engaged to be married, have a baby on the way. He did 10 years incarcerated, and he's 3 years home now, and he fell off the wagon. He relapsed. He has an addiction problem, things of that nature. And so they came to me, for talk and hope or whatnot. And I got these people into well, not these people, but I got him into a detox. I convinced him to get into detox and that we would go from there. 24 hours later, the detox kicked him out, Alex.
Mm.
The detox kicked him out, told his fiance that she had to come pick him up, pregnant, come pick him up from detox 24 hours later, and that he didn't need detox. He was wasting his time. So they went home, got into a big argument. He left. This was 3 days ago. He left, and supposedly they're not together no more, and he's out doing drugs. And these people got $5 million in the opioid money this year to kick people out of detox. Tell them they don't need it. But it's just knowing that, people see hope in me. And that's why I become so enraged, because these are the little bit of amount of hope that these people can muster up because they believe in me, and they see me. And that's why, when this stuff happens, man, I just want to go into these rooms, start flipping tables and kicking chairs and all kinds of stuff. This is the battle that we fight against, Alex. So go ahead and introduce yourself to the new listeners. I got a whole bunch of new listeners since the last time. And what are we going to discuss today?
Well, my name is Alex Charns. I'm a criminal defense lawyer and a writer from Durham, North Carolina. I've been practicing law for about 41 years. And that 41 years is something that we're going to be talking about, because the FBI for 41 years has played keep away with some documents. So what I'd like to talk about today is my new book, FBI Snitches, Blackmail, and Obscene Ethics at the Supreme Court. And it's got a long subtitle that's pretty important. Plus, how it took 13 years and 3 lawsuits to get the FBI's secret Supreme Court sex and informant files. And actually, I've been working on this project pretty much all my adult life. 1983, I was 1 year out of law school. And David Garrow, who won a Pulitzer Prize for his writing on Martin Luther King, he came out with this book, The FBI and Martin Luther King. And what that book disclosed was JEdgar Hoover and the FBI's illegal tactics to try to destroy him as a leader. They illegally wiretapped him, they illegally bugged him, they followed him, they spread disinformation. And at one point, it was so bad that they took these illegal tapes of him in a compromised situation, sent them to his wife, and implied that if he didn't commit suicide, more was coming. So that's our government. That is
know
our
it.
government. I mean, in terms of outrage, and we talk about what Putin does, what they do in the former Soviet Union and Russia. In this case, you tell a man to commit suicide or you're going to blackmail him, a great civil rights leader who won a Nobel Peace Prize. And it's interesting that we're talking about King because the topic of this book primarily is Abe Fortas, and Abe Fortas is the guy being leaned on by Lyndon Baines Johnson, a Democrat. And I put a head on him of the FBI seal because that's what was happening here. Justice Abe Fortas was being leaned on. So in the document on the screen, it's dated 7/20/67. There's some handwriting at the bottom, and then there's a little squiggly initials. And those little squiggly initials are JEH for John Edgar Hoover, JEdgarHoover. And Dave Garrow taught me that. So otherwise, it's just, someone's scrawling at the bottom of a page, but he taught me that's Hoover's initials, which was something pretty important. But in 1983, I thought if the FBI is trying to destroy Martin Luther King, what was he doing to the Earl Warren Court? Because that Earl Warren Court in the 60s was the opposite of the John Roberts Court. It was extremely liberal. The conservatives were complaining about rulings about criminal justice. They were complaining about rulings about obscenity, and they wanted to do something about it. So it's the reverse situation that we have today. Now the liberals are complaining about the conservative court. Back then, the conservatives were complaining about the Earl Warren Court. And one of the liberals on that court was Abe Fortas. In fact, Edgar Hoover called him a sniveling liberal. That was his view of him. So, and how do we know this? Because there were tens of thousands of pages of FBI files about Abe Fortas that the FBI had collected. They were like a vacuum cleaner for information. And Abe Fortas was known before he got on the court. He represented Clarence Earl Gideon from Florida, I believe.
Gideon,
and Clarence Earl Gideon.
That's a case. That's a big case. The Gideon case.
Yeah, that's a monster case
for
all of us. Watershed case. And Fortas was brilliant. He was a great lawyer. Gideon had written a handwritten letter to the Supreme Court and said, I got convicted and I didn't have a lawyer. They wouldn't give me a lawyer because it wasn't a death penalty case. Well, they picked Abe Fortas because he was a star to argue that case, and he won it in the Supreme Court. So now, for example, I get appointed on cases that are not death penalty cases. I get appointed on all manner of felonies, but that wasn't the case back then. So Abe Fortas was an amazing lawyer, and he happened to be a political ally and almost best friend of Lyndon Baines Johnson, our president. So in 1965, Johnson wanted Abe Fortas to be on the court. And Fortas was having a really good law practice, and he wasn't so sure he wanted to be a Supreme Court justice. But as that picture shows, LBJ is leaning on him. And when President Johnson wanted something, he got it. He was a Texan, he was a big man, and he just had his force of will would make people do things they didn't want to do. So Fortas gets on the court, which was his biggest mistake of his life, because what he ended up doing, because of his friendship with LBJ, it was a series of electronic surveillance cases, bugging cases of a man called Fred Black. He was convicted of tax evasion, but the FBI, they were mad for bugging and wiretapping without warrants. And this was a case that it was the biggest problem for J. Edgar Hoover in his decades as director of the FBI. He thought it was going to blow up and he was going to get blamed, and he was going to end up being turned out as FBI director. So what he had, his number 3 man was a guy named Cartha Deke DeLoach. And DeLoach was friends with Fortas. He was also friendly with the president. Hoover had DeLoach call up Fortas and said, "This, you might consider this unethical, but we need to talk to you about these bugging cases." And it wasn't us, it was Bobby Kennedy, who was the Attorney General prior. And the president, Johnson, hated Bobby Kennedy because they were rivals in the Democratic Party. Fortas didn't like Bobby Kennedy, and J. Edgar Hoover didn't like him either. And Bobby Kennedy didn't like any of them. So that's the scenario we have when someone from the FBI goes to a sitting Supreme Court justice. He sits down at breakfast at Fortas's house, and he doesn't use these words, but I'll use them. He basically asks him to be a snitch. Mm-hmm. And what Fortas says, to paraphrase, anytime you want me to do something, I'm here for you. And so what Fortas does in the most unethical, the biggest judicial misconduct in the history of the Supreme Court, even to this day, he snitches on his brethren in this oak paneled conference room that's supposed to be secret, that you have a court marshal that stands outside the door. Not even the clerks get in. It's 9 justices. And so what Abe Fortas does is he disqualifies himself on these wiretapping cases, these bugging cases. And there's a number of them. So it's Fred Black, who's not known at the time, but also Muhammad Ali. They picked him up. They picked up Jimmy Hoffa. So all these cases, there's about 20 of them that are ready to blow up on J. Edgar Hoover, and he wants to blame someone. So who does he use? He uses the sniveling liberal, as he calls him, behind his back. And Fortas is willing to do it, to blame Bobby Kennedy, to take these memos and go to his other justices, his brethren, and blame Bobby Kennedy. Now, Bobby Kennedy never signed anything about any of these cases. He was smarter than that. He gave general authority for J. Edgar Hoover to wiretap and bug in mob cases, in national security cases, but he was tricky about it. And Hoover didn't get it in writing. So this was kind of hard for Hoover to get out of the situation. But with Fortas as his agent, undercover agent, he essentially had his own bug in the conference room of the Supreme Court. And it was a human bug. It was Justice Fortas. Now, when I found this out, I got these memos after it was 10 12 years after I requested them in 1983. And in 1983, they told me they didn't exist.
Hmm.
I asked them to give me all the files on the Supreme Court. And they said, well, we don't have any. So let's talk about, just step back and talk about false statements.
Well,
If you
let me ask this. What is the FBI's purpose within our federal government, within our structure of America and our growth of America? What place does the FBI truly have?
They are a investigative law enforcement agency. In this case, there was no crime involving, the crime that had already been committed, allegedly, was Fred Black had violated the tax laws. Muhammad Ali and other people that were caught up in these illegal buggings, they made allegations against them. In some cases, there were arguably crimes, but the problem with the FBI and where this new book comes in, it picks up after the Justice Fortas is acting as an informant. It picks up in the next year, 1967, after Fortas has already violated his oath of office and been a FBI snitch. He ended up helping out JEdgar Hoover. Hoover didn't lose his job. He was able to wiggle out because he had a justice doing his bidding. So again, to answer your question, the FBI's job is to investigate federal crime. Their job is not to extort or blackmail or try to destroy a civil rights leader, or in this case, sexually blackmail a sitting Supreme Court justice. And that's what the new book starts with.
And so, we've seen this time and time again. That's hence one of the purposes of me asking that question as to how valuable the FBI really is to our republic is because we've seen time and time again. I was wrapped up in it. I saw it firsthand of what they can do, the power that they have, especially when you're talking about a federal district attorney, and just the cases that you've said back in the 60s. And then when we get into the 80s, we got John DeLorean, the case with John DeLorean in the feds. And then there's just so much where the federal government has stepped in with entrapment, illegal wiretaps, running conspiracies of their own, allowing conspiracies to continue so that people can be murdered and drug. All of this has been proven, and yet nothing is done. And now we got what we got today with the FBI going through all of these trials. So my question is like, where does it stop? How does it stop? And someone like you, Alex, who's bringing light to this, how are you protected in this here? Because what impact is this book going to have against the federal government in exposing them when everybody already knows that the feds are corrupt, but yet nothing is done, and yet people are being murdered over this? And like, you're exposing a lot of stuff, brother.
Yeah. Well, what I can say for sure is the history. And that's why I'm talking about the history, because I don't believe everyone believes that this happened. And so my purpose here, and I have a document appendix at the end of this book. There's 20 pages of FBI files that no one was ever supposed to see. In fact, why I started off saying they weren't truthful in 1983 is we We sued them. We had multiple lawsuits in federal court in Greensboro over these documents that they originally said didn't exist. And it turns out they had a 2,000 page file on the Supreme Court, and it showed it, and they had found it.
Time and time again, they're caught just lying in lies. We've watched Mayorkas lie on the stand. We've watched them all just blatantly lie under oath.
Well, in our case, they were not truthful from Jump Street, 1983. We don't have a file on the Supreme Court. Turns out it was 2,000 pages. Once they were forced to disclose it, and the reason they were is I asked for my own file, and my own file was 900 pages long. And what it was descriptions of the kind of research I was doing. They would do searches for it. They would find documents and tell me they didn't exist. They would give me fee waivers because it was in the public interest and tell me it didn't exist. Now, the blackmail file on Justice Fortas, I asked in 1983 for surveillance of the court, advanced copies of rulings. All of this turned out the FBI was doing this, but yet they were telling me they didn't have any documents responsive to my request. So then I get my own file. I prove that they, in fact, had found this 2,000 page file, and we're in federal court. So what does the judge do? Do they sanction them? If we lie, if you lie to the FBI, we make false statements, it's 5 years in prison.
Yep.
If the FBI lies to us, nothing happens.
Nothing.
We asked the judge to sanction those lawyers, meaning pay our attorney's fees, slap them on the wrist, basically gently spank them in a metaphorical sense. And that never happens.
Nope.
In this case, they sexually blackmailed a sitting Supreme Court justice. I asked for that file in 1983, and then after my book was published, Cloak and Gavel, FBI wiretaps, bugs, informants in the Supreme Court, in 1992, I finished that book. Wouldn't it have been pretty important if JEdgarHoover had his number 3 in command, Cartha DeLoach, go to Fortas and say, we got this report that you were having sex with a teenager?
I've heard.
So
I heard Hoover was into a lot of deviant stuff, man.
So how is it they withheld that from me? They withheld it from the Senate. The Senate Select Committee on Intelligence in the 70s looked into the FBI's use of illegal surveillance, of blackmail, what they did to King, what they did to political activists. And they hid this because the FBI, and this is important today, they had secret filing systems. They had something called do not file files. So when Hoover was blackmailing someone, what he would do is send his underlings like Cartha DeLoach and say, here's what we got on you. We found this in a wiretap, or in this case, for Justice Fortas, it was a, quote, homosexual informant. So they had someone who's gay in the community informing. And the allegation comes from a young man that I'll call him George. I know his whole name, but I don't know how old he was when allegedly he had sex with someone who'd become a Supreme Court justice. So I don't want to name him. I don't think that's appropriate. So we'll call him George. So George is introduced to Justice, soon to be Justice Fortas, by a man named William Bartlett, who's the office manager in Fortas's law firm. And this George brags to the informant, and we don't know the informant's name yet. He brags to the informant that he, quote, balled with Abe Fortas, an important lawyer, on a number of occasions.
Mm.
And he also makes comments belittling, once Justice Fortas gets on the bench, and calls Fortas Miss Fortas. So he's making fun of him.
Mm-hmm.
He's taunting him. This gets in an FBI memo. It goes to Edgar Hoover. Hoover's men, his number 2 in command, Clyde Tolson, who there's books that say Tolson was Hoover's lover. My mentor says they weren't, that they were just, they had a special relationship. They hung out together and they were basically asexual. There's other books that say they were lovers. They were gay lovers. But in any event, Tolson and Deloach, the number 2 and 3 folks at the FBI, says, we got to take this to the Attorney General. A sitting Supreme Court justice, before he got on the court, was having sex with a teenager. And again, I need to say, this is all alleged. It hasn't been proven. We can't be sure whether it's true or not true because we don't have all the information. But what, and you'll see it on the document that you have, that's going to be up on the screen, what Hoover scrawls at the bottom of that memo is, no, Deloach is going to see Fortas, which Deloach does. Again, he meets at Fortas's house, just like he did when he recruited Fortas as a snitch. And he goes to Fortas and he hands him the memo, and he says, Fortas reads it. He denies that he ever had gay sex, and he talked about he had a lot of heterosexual sex in his day, but he denies it. And what Deloach says is, we're not going to do anything about this. And he leaves. So what does that mean? What happened to that memo that you see on the screen? And the other pages about this alleged sex with a teenager. At this time, they had programs, bigoted, horrendous, life-shattering programs called Homosexuals in Government, Sex Deviants, and they would try to root out gay people in the government, people of high stature in public life, root them out, and they would either get them removed from their jobs under these programs, and they started under President Eisenhower. And there's, in my book, there's executive order talking about getting rid of, they called them homosexuals then. Now we refer to folks as gay people. And so these programs were institutionalized in our government, and they were incredibly damaging. They destroyed a lot of lives. So what should have happened here under the law, even though the law was bigoted, they should have reported this to the Attorney General. The Attorney General then was Ramsey Clark, who was good friends with Fortas. But if you're going to blackmail someone, you don't out them. You say your secret is safe with me. And that's what Hoover did. So he took these memos, they put them in something that became, it was called Folder 71. And it went in Hoover's official and confidential files. It was essentially locked in his office
Close to the
And
heart.
no one, he kept it close to him. No one other than his top two lieutenants, Tolson and Deloach, even knew about it, other than his secretary, Ms. Gandy, who put it in a file. That file stayed there. They misled the Senate when they investigated in the 70s. They misled a New York Times reporter who asked for this kind of stuff in 1978. They told me in 83 it didn't exist when I asked for it. And then in court, they misled our federal judge. And after my book is done, what do? After we figured it out? And the way we figured it out was like playing Wheel of Fortune, you know, with Pat Sajak and
Spin the wheel.
Spin the wheel. So what we had a list of Hoover's official and confidential files.
Mm.
And we got it from a professor from Marquette, Ethan Theo Harris, who was kind of my mentor, and he had a list. And number 71 on that list, playing Wheel of Fortune, my lawyer, Paul M. Green, is a wizard, because number 70 on this list was something called foreign influence in the Black extremist movement. 72 was Foxworth. And then he looked at 71 on this list that the FBI didn't give us. We got it from another person who does these Freedom of Information Act requests. And Professor Theo Harris gave us this list, which at the top of it, it's called Special File Room. All Hoover's blackmail files, his official and confidential files, when he died, they kept them under lock and key because they were so dangerous to the Bureau. They were so harmful to how Americans would see the FBI, right, that they locked them away. They hid them from me. They hid them from the Senate. But Paul looked at that and he counted up the possible letters. He said, that's Abe Fortas. They were telling us that they didn't know if maybe there's something about Fortas, but how do we know? We're just FBI agents. We can't tell. There's so many records, you know, it's like they're whining and crying.
Ghosts.
So
ghosts from the past.
Ghosts from the past. And this is in the 90s. And we're telling the judge, we put it in a memo, we figured it out. We played Wheel of Fortune. That's Abe Fortas. So when we show up in federal court, we're in the hallway, and one of the FBI employees hands us 6 pages. And what those 6 pages are, they're folder 71, just as Paul figured out. It's called Abe Fortas, and it's the blackmail file where he's being accused of having of gay sex with a teenager.
So in order to get the truth, you got to assemble a team to attack a Rubik's Cube of clues to pull the truth out, and then now they're just going to hand it to you when they could have handed it to you back in 1983.
Exactly. And what they did is they redacted, they blacked out. Mm-hmm. Redaction is just the fancy word for blackout, as you know. Mm-hmm. They blacked things out to make it look like the allegation was Fortas had sex with the informant. When did I figure out it wasn't true? This year, I'm writing this book, FBI Snitches, and I do a request to the FBI. So are they going to change the way they do things and actually fess up that here, we're going to give you some more records? No. I had to go to National Archives. National Archives, I asked, after my book was already in the first edition, already published, and it's print on demand, so as you know, I can change it.
Right, right.
National Archives in 4 days turns around and gives me what the FBI took decades to hide from me. And what they gave me was the names.
The
I got
unredacted
George's
version.
name, the a less redacted version. They still
Less
didn't give me
redacted.
the informant, but they gave me Bartlett, the office manager in Fortas's uh, law firm before he got on the Supreme Court. They gave me George's name. They gave me the arrest records of both men for uh, for sodomy. They call
Mm,
it disorderly conduct. That's the term they used for gay sex back then, which was illegal, which is not illegal today because of Supreme Court rulings. But they were in the business of destroying people's lives. So getting back to your question, what is the job of the FBI? It's not to blackmail Supreme Court justices to get them to do what you want.
right.
That's not their job. Their job is to investigate actual crime, not to
But all of that evolved though. The federal, I mean, of course, back in the day was just the federal government was maritime law. Like you go back so far in federal law, then you'll see nothing but maritime law. It wasn't until that they passed the criminal code, which I heard they did illegally. It was unconstitutionally passed. It was done in the middle of the night, the 11th hour, all of this. And they accumulated the votes that they accumulated to pass the federal code. And then now, you got the federal government that then started to get into federal crimes. You have federal crimes now, which they use to take down the mafia, right? So it's knowing that all of this evolved into what it is today, but you are laying out the roadmap of this. This is Hoover in there with his baby, like working and pulling these strings and accumulating. Because back then, I don't think that they, of course, had the power that they got today. They weren't ingrained like they are today. So I think that it would be very fragile of a state back then if like you say, all this gayness was to come out and be exposed. That branch of the federal government, the FBI, probably would have been dissolved at that time, or fought to be dissolved.
he might have lost his directorship. They might have defunded them. They might have put all sorts of things in place to put limits on the FBI if Congress knew that they had a snitch on the Supreme Court,
Hmm.
that they were sexually blackmailing. It
A
doesn't
Supreme
matter.
Court justice.
It
He's
doesn't
supposed to be
matter.
a
This is
Supreme Court
true.
justice is supposed to be the most honorable person that we have to oversee our whole functionality of America.
Exactly. So what does that say about justice in America?
It's not
That
blind.
it's not blind. And so here, there's a lot of discussion now among people like me who are very liberal about what Justice Clarence Thomas is doing with billionaires who have interests in Supreme Court cases. So what conservatives can do is point to this. You have LBJ, who's a Democrat, and you have Fortas, who helped the Democrats, and you have JEdgar Hoover, who would help whoever the president was at the time because he wanted to keep his job. And it's not one party or the other. Is there a difference in this misconduct between the parties? They all do it. The books that I've written show liberals or conservatives, Democrats or Republicans took favors from Hoover and violated, in this case, the judicial oath in a just shameless way, and he stayed on the court. So what happens whether it's true or not, whether he had sex with George or not, it doesn't matter when the allegation itself in an FBI file is enough to blackmail him. So every case that Fortas had from 1967 to when he resigned in disgrace for other reasons, he shouldn't have ruled on any case having to do with the FBI or the Justice Department, because he was tainted.
Right.
He was
Exactly.
tainted by the blackmail.
Well, he
So
should have
they
been removed from the
succeeded.
bench.
He should have been removed from the bench. If you had someone who was actually looking into crimes, the allegation, they hid that. They hid it from the Senate. They hid it from the public. They hid it from historians. And then they hid it from me until my book was done. It was published. And then they handed it to me like they were doing me a favor decades later. And even now, I did another FOIA request. FOIA is Freedom of Information Act, to get the name of the informant, because Bartlett, the office manager, George, they're both dead. And I think if the informant's dead, then I have the right to get his file. So to dig deeper. So what I have here, I have a special letter that I got today at the post office. Who's it from? U.S. Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation. It's dated March 12th, 2024. It's sealed up. Would you like me to open it? Because this is responding to my request for more records on the sexual blackmail. Should I open it?
Please do. Entertain our guests.
All right, here we go. You hear that? I'm seeing this for the first time, and I'm gonna tell you what it says.
Awesome.
It's dated March 7th. It's got the FBI seal on the left in color. It's directed to me, and my full name is Mark Alexander Charns. It has M. Alexander Charns, and it has my request number, subject Fortas Abe, folder 71, JEdgarHoover's files. And what do they tell me? When I first requested this a month ago, they told me what you're requesting is on our public website. It's called the Vault. You can go and look at files, FBI files on people. It's actually kind of interesting. But they told me it was on the Vault. It's not on the Vault. These are blackmail files. You're not going to publicize it, FBI. Right. So what does this letter tell me? This is in response to your Freedom of Information Privacy Act request. Based on the information that you provided, we were unable to identify records subject to the FOIPA that are responsive to your request. So we're going back to 1983. It's 41 years later. The FBI is still telling tall tales. They say, quote, they have a little check mark. Records potentially responsive to your request were transferred to the National Archives and Records Administration. If you wish to review these records, file a Freedom of Information Act request with the National Archives. Okay, well, they know full well when I asked for this that it wasn't on their public website. Right. So this has taken a couple months. They're doing the same thing. Is this a lie? Is it incompetence? Is it a false statement? If they were a private citizen, would they be prosecuted? Those are all good questions.
And the thing of it is that, I mean, in today's times, that news is not really that significant compared to the news that they're faced with today. So it's like, it brings me back to the question as to, as we the people, what do we do when we know that our own federal government lies to us? These FOIA requests I filed many of them. So many people file FOIA requests, and this is supposed to be something for us. that is public information that we are supposed to be entitled to, but by the time we get them, as you explained earlier, they're blacked out, you know, quote unquote redacted to the extent that you can't even really see anything, or it's these games, you know. It's very few times have I seen anybody get the information that they were looking for by filing FOIA requests. And for the listener, FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA.
You're exactly right. My first request for files on the Supreme Court, all these things that we've been discussing, informants, blackmail, trying to get advance notice of opinions, all of which happened. And it took me decades and finally it was 3 lawsuits. And even that didn't get everything. It didn't get it in time for me to put it in a university press book that's took years to write. They hid it and hid it and hid it until we play Wheel of Fortune and figure out. I'll just say it because I'm feeling spicy. We figured out their lies. When I'm feeling generous, I call them incompetent. When
Right.
I'm not feeling generous, like right now, it's a lie.
Yeah.
It's an absolute lie, and they lied for decades. And they were either lying or incompetent a month or 2 ago when I asked for these records again, and they tell me it's on their public website. And I tell them, no, it isn't. And I appeal it to the Justice Department. And at the same time, I asked the National Archives, and in 4 days, National Archives gives it to me. Why? What is this some indication of how the FBI does people in criminal cases? As a historian, as a citizen historian and lawyer, someone asked me, well, what's happening at the Supreme Court or the FBI today? I said, well, when I'm 120, I'm 67 now. When I'm 120, I'll tell you if I'm still alive.
Yeah, exactly.
Because using the Freedom of Information Act or using congressional investigations, we have delays of decades, if not half century, to find out. These disclosures are from the 60s, but I can tell you for certain that this happened. We don't know the truth of the allegation about what happened to Fortas, whether he was having sex or not with George, but it doesn't matter because the blackmail was finalized when they hid this away. He knew they had it. He knew they could use it against him. And he changed the way he ruled. There's a case called Spinelli.
Familiar with Spinelli?
And it involved an FBI snitch. And what Fortas did, he ruled in such a way as to give the FBI the benefit of the doubt. The rest of the court said, no, that this doesn't meet the standard of probable cause. We're ruling against the FBI. And Fortas, again, subject to the blackmail, is always looking over his shoulder. Right. Can we trust his ruling? No, we can't trust his ruling. He was blackmailed. So he dissents because he's afraid, and for good reason he's afraid. He shouldn't have been on the court because he was a snitch. The FBI should have gone to the Senate, and they should have had him impeached. But they were using him. They were benefiting from him.
That is what the FBI does. That is what the FBI does.
So getting back to your question, what is their actual job, and are they doing it? What are they doing now? And I, as a lawyer and a researcher, can't tell you what they're doing now. I can surmise and I can speculate and have informed opinions based on what they did throughout history. and what they do to me on my Freedom of Information Act cases. They don't tell the truth.
Right.
They mislead. They're incompetent.
And
So
I noticed that firsthand. I witnessed that firsthand in a federal courtroom going through trial of how they allowed people. They knew that federal district attorney absolutely knew that this person was lying on the stand, but yet she still chose to use him and question him as if he was telling the truth, knowingly that he was lying. That district attorney knowingly knew that federal agent, that lead federal agent Timothy Lutz on my case, was running around doing the things that he was doing in order to lock this conspiracy in. And when I sat here and I'm sitting in the courtroom and I see this with my own eyes, and I see how my attorney that I paid a high 5-figure sum for is being shut down and told to sit down by the judge, but yet the judge has no power over the district attorney, and she's actually telling him what he can and can't do. That's when I knew, man, I'm in a whole different ball game right here.
Right. The lesson here is, well, I would just gently, friendly amendment to the judge can't do anything. The judge absolutely can hold that prosecutor in contempt. Is it going to happen? No. It's not going to happen. Just like
Touché.
Nothing is going to happen to Edgar Hoover or folks in power that if there's not checks and balances, if we don't have people that are honorable in their jobs, this will continue. And so from what I think this means, this FBI snitches, blackmail, obscene ethics at the Supreme Court, is to just shake people and say, this is what your government did in the past. This is what your Supreme Court did in the past. So you better be wary, because if you don't watch, if you don't have a press that's actually
for the people
going to do investigative reporting, if you don't sue every chance you get when you get screwed, our government is lost.
That's right. And we're on the verge of it.
It doesn't matter what party it is.
Nope.
That's what I found.
No, because I honestly think that this FBI now today is the most powerful entity in our United States. I don't think it has anything to do with either president. Whoever's holding that seat, I think that they have to adhere to the FBI. I mean, this is playing out in these courts. If people was to sit down and watch these trials with Mayorkas and them, you can just see the machismo that's coming out of the FBI, just the word I'm looking for, the uppity nature, just that they feel that they don't have to answer questions, and that these questions are watching that, I almost got into, it just came to me, it's almost a sense of watching Jack Nicholson on the stand during A Few Good Men. And it was at the point to where Tom Cruise is breaking Jack Nicholson down, and then all of a sudden he took that air of God, in a sense, as to, who are you to question me about my job? I'm the one that provides freedom for you. I'm the one that does this for you. Who are you to question how I provide it and where it comes from? And I get a lot of that from the FBI. Just right. Coming out of that office as to, who are you to question what we're doing? We're protecting the United States. And that's kind of how they look at it. But they're not protecting the United States. They're protecting their agenda.
Right. Right.
So I think where we stand at now, and the importance of your book that is coming out, and why people should read that, is so that they have a clear understanding. Because from what I'm hearing, like, we had a Supreme Court justice who was under control, who wasn't allowed to give free opinion about critical decisions that shaped our our time that we're living in right now. So if we know that, then I would say that an ethical review of every decision that was made from that timeline should be gone back and looked at and asked, was this the right decision, knowing that we had somebody that was under the control of the FBI who was being blackmailed, who was a snitch. We need to go back and look at the ethicalness, that's a word, of his opinions through all of these cases that were decided, at least the watershed cases.
Right. And he was a brilliant man. He was a brilliant man, but he had this fatal flaw. And the fatal flaw was he did the bidding of Edgar Hoover and his president.
He didn't have a
And
spine. That was his fatal flaw.
In this respect, he was spineless. So it doesn't matter how brilliant you are,
right,
if you don't have basic ethics. If when you swear that I'm going to follow the Constitution, and
that's
you
right.
violate that in the most, that's why in the title I say obscene ethics. It's not the obscenity cases. What was obscene is Justice Fortas's ethics and the ethics of the people around him and the other justices. Justice Brennan, another liberal, another Democrat. He's quoted in a biography. Edgar Hoover used Fortas for a lot of things. If you knew that, why didn't you do something?
Right.
Why didn't you do something?
And that's why I urge out to these Americans, if you see something, say something. Like the government is trying to get you to do to that with them. You know, it's understanding that when you see the government doing something, you have to stand up and say something, because if not, you have nobody but to blame but yourself as to why we are in the position that we're in. And this is why we're in this position, because we're relying on a government that you just heard Mr. Charns tell you a lot of it was formed out of corruptness, out of lies and secrecy. And I've been saying that from the very beginning, that this country wasn't founded on and built upon honor and code. It was built upon conspiracy and murder and slavery. So it's understanding how that branched out into our society today and how it's forming us moving forward. But we, the people, have this opportunity to stand up, say something, and really change the culture. Because I'm telling you, man, if we all was to stand up as one, raise one voice, and say one thing, the government would have no choice but to adhere. Everything would fall apart.
Right. And let's talk about snitches today. We know this. One of the most dangerous things to an accused person, to the criminal justice system working, are snitches. FBI snitches, state snitches, local snitches. They're being paid in some form, either lesser sentences or money, for their testimony.
I can tell you,
someone's on the jury, think about this book where you have the Supreme Court justice not doing justice, but doing injustice.
That's right.
So when you have that informer on the stand and you're on a jury, you better question whether they're lying or telling the truth, because someone's life, someone's liberty is at stake for bought testimony. It's disgusting. It should be illegal.
Abhorrent. It's
Abhorrent.
extortion.
Right.
It's straight extortion. And just to validify what it is that you're saying, in my own case, the federal snitches in my case, like they took down not only the pyramid of our case, but they worked outside of the scope. They continued to be federal snitches. And one thing I do know with my own eyes and my own experience is that when you cooperate with the federal government, it does not stop at your sentence. The federal government tells you that you are subjected to them for the rest of your life. They can come call on you at any time because of this favor. And whatever they gave you, they can take back. That is part of your plea deal. So these people can come and get you at any time once you're an informant with them, they can take you, they can fly you across the world, they can put you in undercover situations. And I know that personally. 2 rats in my case. The first one, he's a millionaire now. Why is he a millionaire? Because when he got out of prison, right, he took down this whole conspiracy, ratted on everybody, got a little bit of time, got out of prison, and continued to cooperate. And what you're saying, Mr. Charns, is that a federal informant is subjected up to 30% of anything that the federal government confiscates for that informant's role in that conspiracy. So if I am a snitch and I'm snitching on a kingpin over here, and I bring that kingpin to the FBI and they bust that kingpin, I can get up to 30% of everything that's confiscated from that kingpin. So
that's just bought testimony.
It's bought testimony. It's extortion. And then on the flip side, if I'm in the crime, then of course I can go from a life sentence down to damn near 3 years in prison for my testimony. So again, it's bought testimony.
Right. And one of the things it's a sentence quote that the end of this book, page 71. Quote, a secretive law enforcement agency with a sordid history can never be trusted. We can't trust them because they haven't earned our trust. What they've earned is our distrust. What they've earned is a history that is so blackened by misconduct that it extends to this present day. The court we have now started with Hoover. Mm-hmm. Who does the background checks of our Supreme Court justices? The FBI. Mm-hmm. Who let them in the door? The Senate.
Who does the background checks on our presidents? This is why I say that the FBI is the most powerful entity that this country has, and we see how it's operated, its function. We see what their agenda is. And when we sit here and we say we don't think that Joe Biden's calling the shots, or we don't think that Donald Trump's calling the shots of these things, I wholly agree with that. I just think that they're mouthpieces.
I can't disagree with you. I don't have the proof that I have about what happened in the 60s because I can't. It's not possible for me as the little guy. I'm a little guy. If we put this camera about my office, I have a desk, I have a bunch of files, I have some plants, and I have no staff anymore. I'm not retired because I'm fighting as hard as I can for my clients, and I try cases and I fight the prosecutor. I've sued the prosecutor under the public records law, a so-called progressive prosecutor who hides Brady material, exculpatory material documents. She had a policy, our progressive prosecutor, and she wouldn't give it up. So I sued her and got it under the local version of the Freedom of Information Act, our Public Records Act. And she ran for Attorney General, saying she's progressive. If you hide your policies on exculpatory information, you're not progressive.
Right.
You're regressive.
Right.
She lost. Now, I can't say it's due to me suing her or publicizing that because I'm a little guy. I'm the pipsqueak. I'm someone that I fight as hard as I can fight, but I'm just the little guy. Right. I'm a guy in a little office doing the best I can, mainly court-appointed clients. And after 41 years, I'm still doing this because it matters. It matters. If you save one life, I think it's in the Talmud, you've saved the world. If I save one client, I've saved the world. And I believe that. And I fight. And sometimes I get despondent. I just feel like I should quit because I'm beating my head against the wall. But then there are other times, like today, I feel hope because you and I are talking and we're bringing this information to the public.
Amen.
And that maybe someone out there that is going to sit on a jury is going to say, Why should I trust a paid snitch? That someone might hear what we're saying today and say, that's bought testimony. I don't believe it.
That's right.
I'm going to question that. That this system isn't fair. As you mentioned, it was started in slavery. And I've heard you say many times, the only place slavery is still legal is in our prisons. It's right in the Constitution.
Right in the
Which
Constitution.
it's right in the Constitution. I've heard you say it many times, and you're right to say it, and we don't say it enough.
It says it, boy.
So
I don't understand. You know, that's the whole thing. It tells you blatantly, slavery is abolished unless you are convicted of a crime, and it doesn't progress from there to say when that ends. So when all my returning citizens are sitting there saying, why is it so hard to come out of prison? Why is being a convicted felon a scarlet letter? Because the Constitution allows it, and the system was built upon that. So it's understanding that slavery has not ended. We are still enslaved if you're a convicted felon. You can never be a first-rate citizen again, right? So it's knowing that once you, and this is for the kids to understand and listen, that once you are convicted of a felon, you will always be convicted of a felon. No matter how small the felony is, it will always be on your record because you cannot be that first-class citizen no more.
Amen. Amen.
So when we say that, when we say, you know, and I'm a firm believer that this is why we get the depictions that we get of slavery, Alex. You know, I just had this conversation with my friend Alex that's staying here with me the other day. And when the topic of slavery came up, he looked at me befuddled. He's like, well, what does this have to do with me? I'm like, what do you mean, brother? We're all enslaved. If you're a convicted felon, and I stopped right there because then I noticed. I'm like, well, let me ask you. I say, what do you think of when I use the word slavery? He said, well, black people. That is the indoctrination. They have shown us time and time again, when we refer to slavery, the first image that comes up in our mind is chains and whips and black people. So that we would never ever think that slavery still exists today because we don't see that radical spectrum side of slavery. But that does not mean that slavery doesn't exist. And that is my goal, Alex, is to wake the Americans up to understand that there is a system of slavery in place here in America. They're capitalizing off it, they're building off it, and they're sending people into it because it builds prisons. It pays the judges, it pays the attorneys, it pays the prosecutors, it pays the cops. Cities get money off it. There is so much money to be made off crime that they've made it into the business that it is. I go on a rant, I'm sorry.
It is a business, and we need our jurors to question and that standard, proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
That's right.
That proof that entirely convinces us of the accused's guilt. Why do jurors and why does the public assume that someone who's a prosecutor or someone who has a badge, whether it's FBI or local, why do we assume good faith and honesty to the uniform? I asked those jurors.
It goes back to my indoctrination. Look at the movies, Alex. Look at the movies going back to the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s of how the cop was always the hero. Go watch Rambo. Right? John Rambo was just walking down the road. He was just a drifter walking down the road. He wasn't breaking no laws, but yet he's accosted by a cop who wants to bring him into jail. And we never question none of this. Right? So movies have indoctrinated us to believing that a cop can break the law in the name of justice. He's always trying to catch the bad guy. So now then when we see this in real life, these cops out here breaking the law, it's, oh, I don't mind a cop breaking the law if he's catching the bad guy. We've been indoctrinated to see that. Look how they've made a mockery of the court system. The 80s, we had that show called Night Court that just made a complete mockery of the court system. And then you have shows like Seinfeld and all of that, where they would make fun of jury duty and really got America to think that jury duty was just so laborious that now people hate jury duty. They'll lie to get out of jury duty. And jury duty is one of the most responsible, one of the most important responsibilities that we have as American citizen, because any one of us could be sitting in that courtroom fighting for our freedom. And we want our peers, our community peers, to be sitting in that box, listening intently. Because like you said, these prosecutors lie. They'll pay snitches to come in and lie. They'll do everything that they can. And I'm relying on you 12 individuals to sit here and see that and protect me as an American citizen. But they're falling asleep over there, Alex. They fall asleep. Right. They try to lie to get out of it. They don't even want to be there. I'm sorry, I go on my rants.
Other than the military, in fact, I would say jurors are as important as the military, because what they're doing is defending us. And if they don't defend us, if they don't put the prosecutor through the paces and don't look at the evidence and follow the law, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest standard in the world, to make the prosecutor prove their case, they've let someone down, they've sent someone to prison who's innocent, and they've done a disservice. So
destroyed a family, been part of destroying communities. Yep.
And why are the defense lawyers always the bad guys? Why are the prosecutors the good guys? We have a job to do, which is to ensure that the prosecutor meets their burden, that only people who are guilty are being punished. I mean, there's something, Liberty's Last Champion. That's a slogan for the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. Mm-hmm. Liberty's Last Champion. Your defense lawyer is someone that has been given responsibility under the Constitution to protect your life and your freedom. So Liberty's the Last Champion is surely it. And I think it's an honorable profession, being a criminal defense lawyer.
Amen.
Not everyone does it to the best of their ability. Some are greedy, and some are
capitalistic.
They're in cahoots with the prosecutor.
Right.
They golf with them. They care more how they're viewed in the community. That they think that if they fight hard for their client, that someone's not going to like them at the country club. I don't belong to the country club. I don't golf with prosecutors. I play hockey.
Right. And again, it goes back to the indoctrination, Alex. You know, again, we look at the movies. You got the big silk suit and wearing attorneys that, you know, they portray to be, you know, very narcissistic and egoic, and they're defending these high profile criminals and all that. And then, you know, here goes the little prosecutor just working on the state's salary, and it's so hard for them, you know, and it just, these movies and shows personalize the prosecutor and the police in such an emotional way to the watcher that when they see them in real life, they can't decipher between fiction and reality, especially when they're watching these shows like CSI and all this stuff, or even these, and this is why I cannot stand A&E and Discovery, because they portray themselves to be factual and documentary, but they're not. They're not. You know, and when they sit here and they play these new detectives and all of this stuff, if you just listen to it, listen to the narrator and the new detectives and all of this stuff and how they talk about, you know, this person, it's just the picture that they paint. You know, it's the picture that they paint that the cops are always right. The state's attorney is always the defender of justice. And the criminal defense attorney is the one that's always trying to interfere with justice, and he only cares about money. This has all been indoctrination to turn the American citizens away from our criminal justice system so that they can manipulate it and do it and run it the way that they have been and will continue to do so. You know, and I praise you, Mr. Alex Charns, for being the you know the community hero. You know, and I always say, if you want to find a good defense attorney, find one in a shabby little office somewhere with 1,000 folders on his desk, because he's the one that cares about his clients. He's the one that's not selling out and taking deals with the prosecutor so that he can have big houses and big cars and all, and be at the country club and all that. This is an individual who is trying to actually win cases and fight for justice, and that's why they stick him in these small little places, give him all the shit cases and all of this stuff. You know, it's a deterrent for you, because you're not supposed to be caring about your clients. You're supposed to be horse trading with them at the water cooler with the prosecutor when they want this one and we'll give you this one and all of this stuff. And if you don't, you're going against the grain and you're outcasted and you're ostracized.
Well, I want to leave with some advice to folks about how do you pick a good lawyer.
Amen.
What I find important is seeing my clients. So I do high-level felonies. A lot of times my clients are poor. Of course, I don't get appointed unless they're so poor they can't hire a lawyer, what they call indigent, like Clarence Earl Gideon was. He was poor.
Poor.
So what do you do when your client, when the question to ask of these lawyers, do you see your court-appointed clients in jail? How often do you go to the jail? How long do you stay? How long are your trials? My last trial was 3 weeks. It took a week to pick a jury. So these questions, these folks, these lawyers that don't go see their clients, how do you know what to do in the case? How do you inform them if you don't go see them?
Right.
I mean, it's just amazing. The certain folks that don't regularly see their client, inform their client of what's going on, go over the discovery. So the one question is, how often do you see your court-appointed clients? Whether you're a millionaire, whether you're Donald Trump or not, if the lawyer you're hiring doesn't regularly see their court-appointed clients, then you got a loser on your hands. You have someone you don't want. That's the test. So
it's almost like, in a sense, when you're in the hospital and you want information from your nurse, you know, and it's almost the same situation, you know, and is that nurse or that doctor, do they have good bedside manner? Are they there informing you about what's going on, or do they just come in and just give you a quick checkup and then answer a couple little questions and then leave? It's the same principle. Absolutely. It's called care. Right. It's called of yourself. It's intent. And that is what attorneys are there for, is for that. But with that being said, it is also your responsibility to know your case. And it is your responsibility to help your attorney. Your attorney's not there to do your case for you. He's there to guide you and help you through the process. But you have to help your attorney do that as well. So if you want your attorney to be engaged in the case, you yourself have to be engaged in that case as well. And it don't mean that you have to know law, but you have to help him as much as possible. One, by not lying to him. The worst thing you can do is lie to your attorney. He has to know everything. And I really didn't understand that from the beginning, but now studying law and understanding law, being in courtrooms and things of that nature, I understand how important it is for your attorney to know every nook and cranny, because he has to have every little grain of gunpowder to put in that bullet to shoot at the state. And if you're holding things from him, the state's going to find out, I promise you. And when we're talking about the federal government, they're definitely going to find out. So the last thing your attorney wants is to be sitting in trial and get blindsided by something because you didn't want to tell him the truth.
Yep. If the lawyer gets blindsided, you as the client are blindsided. So
Absolutely.
Cooperate. But
well, Mr. Charns, great conversation, man. Thank you for this awareness. Again, please let the listener know where they can purchase your latest book and all your books, and how they can get a hold of you if they ever need to.
In terms of starting with the book, FBI Snitches, Blackmail, and Obscene Ethics at the Supreme Court, Amazon has it. Also, any indie bookstore that has IndieBound. So, for example, I have a local bookstore called The Regulator. Anyone could order it online. Some people don't like Amazon, so you can get that book from independent bookstores, as well as Amazon. Amazon's convenient, but some people talk about their issues. I won't go into that.
That's a whole other story for another day.
Yeah, another day. Cloak and Gavel, FBI wiretaps, bugs, informers in the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, right now, Amazon is the only place you can get it. The hard copy is selling for some outrageous amount. The first edition, which you can get for $2.99 an ebook, and you can look at it in or get it from the library. Cloak and Gavel is in a lot of libraries. It's $9.99 from Amazon. I tried to price it so anyone that wants it can do the ebook. The FBI Snitches book is $8. It's 99 cents to get the ebook. You can get the ebook of FBI Snitches and get all the FBI documents. So the place to get that, the ebook is only available on Amazon, but for 99 cents, you can look at those records and then you can say, hey, I agree with Charns. This was blackmail, or you could say, that wasn't blackmail. Hoover was just trying to help Fortas out. He was just trying to be his bud.
Yeah.
So you can look at those records and you can judge me as a researcher. You can say he's right or he's wrong. I wanted to put those records there because it's important for people to be able to trust what I say.
Absolutely.
And so it's there, 99 cents. You can look at decades worth of work that I did. I wanted it to be accessible. I'm happy to do a Zoom anywhere in the country if you're a teacher or a professor to talk about these things, because it's important that jurors know that we can't always trust what is put up there on the stand. And one way to do that is look at what's happened historically at the Supreme Court and the lower courts. And in getting in touch with me, I'm the only Charns anywhere around, CHAR, N like Nancy, S like in Sam. And if you call me or email me, I will get back to you. I pretty much only practice criminal law in Durham. My retirement is only doing criminal cases where I can walk to the courthouse in Durham. But I talk to people. If you have FOIA questions, public records questions, I'd love to talk to people about their public records in FOIA cases, because that's how we keep the government accountable, is by what I call slapping them. We slap them with what we have, which is we have these public records laws. We have the ability to file suits against the government to keep them honest. We can't slap them in real life, but we can slap them around by exercising our rights and not using violence, but actually using the law to our advantage to get to the root of the problem. Use the Freedom of Information Act, use your Public Records Act, that's how we're going to get change in this country, is if we all take responsibility and do what Thomas FreeMe does. Is, he sees a problem, he tries to take care of it. We all have that responsibility as citizens. And the Public Records Law, Freedom of Information Act, anywhere in the country you call me and you say, I want to talk about open records, public records, I'll try to help you. That's I can't do criminal defense anywhere else. I choose not to, because I'm just not able to travel around, and choose not to. But if you have a Freedom of Information Act question, I will try to help you or put you in good hands, in the right direction. And I appreciate Thomas FreeMe having me on your show, and this is great. And I think we've had a good conversation, and I hope if people have questions, that they get in touch, and I'm happy to answer more fully about the books if someone emails me.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely. I mean, Alex is on my friends list here on Facebook. You guys can already know that if you just Google Thomas FreeMe, you can find all my social media. And you can't find Alex, I can absolutely direct you right to him. So I actually probably know some people that may need some of your help on the FOIA, that are actually doing FOIA and things of that nature. And I didn't know that you were that deep into it. But yeah, I may send a couple people your way that could probably use a little guidance, because they're just being shut down. They're being shut down with it.
Well, that's what they did to me. They did it for years. And so that's the initial response until you exercise your force as a citizen and say, I'm going to vindicate my rights, and you're not going to do this to me, and you stick with it. So,
absolutely.
I'm still going. 41 years later, I'm still trying to get to the bottom of this snitch that is snitching on a snitch, snitching on a Supreme Court justice.
I think that might be the title. 41 years running down a rat.
That would be a good title. I thought I had a good title, but that's probably better.
41 years running down a rat.
I love it. It's succinct. It's catchy, and that's what happened. And I'm until my dying day, I'm going to be trying to dig at this. And,
I'm with you, brother, and I'm with you.
Truth.
I'm with you. And anytime that you find it or you want to talk about it, I mean, my show is open to you, because I love these discussions. I love bringing awareness to the American citizen. And yes, please, jurors, when you open that envelope and it says you have been selected for jury duty, go and pay attention and trust no one. Don't trust the defendant. Don't trust the attorney. Trust nobody in that room other than just your perceptions, your experiences, and have enough trust in yourself to say, I am a competent individual that can make my own sound decisions based upon bullshit or real shit. So it's just knowing that you're going in there with no judgments, no preconceived notions. You're just going in with an open mind and just allowing people to talk, and you're just watching the play as it unfolds, and knowing that a man's balance, a man or a woman, a life, is in the balance of your hands. So that is the importance of this here for our system to run correctly. So, Mr. Alex Charns, you stay safe up there, man.
Oh, you as well. And bless your brother. I appreciate it. And be well.
Absolutely, man. And holler if you need me, man.
All right. You as well.